Hello, guys, and welcome to my Championship Sunday Thoughts video. This video will obviously be going over the two games that determined who would go to the Super Bowl. And disclaimer, if you didn't watch my predictions video, both of the teams I predicted would win lost these games. You know, and we'll start off with Washington and the Eagles. Kind of a doozy of a game if you look at it. Washington, I fully think that Jaden Daniels outplayed Hurts. Yes, he didn't have as many yards as he barely had more yards than Hurts did, and Hurts had a higher completion percentage. But it's like Hurts had one throwing TD to three rushing TDs type of thing. But it's like, as far as I'm concerned, given him, he only gets those rushing TDs because he happens to have the ball, and it's more on the O line getting the touchdown for him, But looking at this, Jaden Daniels did, exactly what I said. I thought he would. He was dicing up the defense. The only problem with the Commanders in this game was literally key fumbles at very, very key times. You have the one where you're bringing it out before the half, you're hoping to score and, have some momentum on your side coming onto the half, but instead you do a complete, essentially what I think doomed them in the game. You do a complete wrong thing where it's like, maybe you did have to return it because it was kind of a short kick that bounced, towards the goal line and perhaps it would have went in type of thing. But it's like, I feel like that guy should have let it bounce back. That I haven't seen very many kicks bounce and the guys pick them up and they turn them into a good thing this year. I think it's one of the strategies with the dynamic kickoff. And I think the dynamic kickoff is more advantageous with the rules that they are now for the kicking team, to be honest with you. But, you also look at De'Ami Brown. I feel sorry for him. I thought the play looked really, really good. And then it's like he tried to really just force too much about it. And that's what happens. These younger players, it's like when we saw Zay Flowers last offseason try to extend it, and it ultimately cost the Ravens the game against the Chiefs, and, you see it with these younger players. They're always trying to do too much in the playoffs. And it becomes such a game of like inches and ball control that I would have thought that would have been coached into their heads. And it's like you look at even Eckler, a savvy vet coming from the Chargers who's been in the league for a while. Yeah, he didn't have much playoff experience, but it's like I just don't understand how these teams keep on having these issues against the Eagles. I am finally kind of jumping on the bandwagon because I think that this team is just too stacked, doesn't have, enough injuries to really slow them down to be able to go into Super Bowl weekend and make this a game that they can take. Maybe not easily because it's the Chiefs, but I think that they have a really good shot to go in and win, in the Super Bowl. But that's, another topic for another video. But looking at this, Jaden Daniels did have to get into kind of desperation mode. They did do a decent job protecting him and whatever else, but overall he wasn't. I mean, they didn't really have a run game. He was able to run it only a few times, and ultimately like I said, the fumbles really screwed the Commanders, and it's like Philadelphia. It's like I said, anything can happen, and the worst did happen to the Commanders. Really, nothing really went right, this game, but, looking at Philadelphia, this has kind of been their recipe, but they did have a decent pass game. And I think their pass game needs to be at minimum at this level. Because you look at Saquon, yeah, he had the long run for 60 yards, but then 14 other carries, and he's only got 38 other yards on that. Like, that isn't a very good average. You look at, his lawn of 60, like I said, and, it's great, And he did have, it was a really good game. It was a special game for him. Obviously his birthday's on the Super Bowl on February 9th. Exciting stuff. Same with Cooper DeJean, but I think that this is exciting for the Eagles. And while I don't like Sirianni, I won't deny that they have a lot of talent and they have really good momentum, to be able to go and play Kansas City to deny them the three-peat. But we're moving on to Bills Chiefs. Obviously a lot with this game, kind of, looking at it, it's like, to me, Josh Allen played a sound game. I think that it was a lot slower than you would have wanted them to be. I think he should have been a lot more gun-ho, tried to play a lot more hurry up against the Chiefs. But their defense played well. They did a really good job of containing Josh Allen, even though he did have some runs that did well and that sort of thing. But, to end, where essentially he had a good number of tush pushes that failed, but to still end the game with a 3.5-yard average, that means that when he was getting out, he was doing effective runs, taking off like like 6 tush pushes or whatever the hell it was. But I will say this, it's kind of ridiculous that we don't have some sort of a system, in place to be able to show and determine whether it is a first down. I think it's kind of asinine. And I get it, they're trying to move on from the chain gain, but you need some sort of a contingency for it. I think that most people agree that he looked like he at least got close to the line to the gain, and they just didn't even give it to him. And they let the guy who can't see determine the spot of the ball. I literally said it, and then everyone post-game, this is what they're talking about. It's that and the apparent catch, type of thing. I think it's really kind of dumb to call simultaneous catching. I get it, I guess, in the sense that, like, I guess you can have a scrap for the football, but it should not be where a guy can go to the ground and then the wide receiver can wrestle with him for the ball. It shouldn't be that way. That's unfair to undersized corners because it makes their job even harder than it already is. It makes it, so that it's like, oh, you could essentially, throw, these jump balls, are just, they're not, you can't really pick them off if you have a good jump ball guy. I think there's something to be said of a guy that can actually go over as a wide receiver and catch it and not essentially try to pry it from a DB's hands just because he was able to make a better play and then give it to this. And it's like the definition of simultaneous is at the same time. They're going against what, the actual definition is, and they have their own twisted, messed up rule, in my opinion. And it's like, to me, the ball touched enough of the ground that it's like, the play should be dead. And, I get that the ball didn't move, which, don't get me wrong, the ball, we all know, can, if it survives the ground, meaning that the ground does not impact whether it's a catch. But at that point, I feel like, you have this guy on the ground, he has control of the ball, and the Kansas City guy goes to, essentially wrestle him for it. And it's some boony backyard football rule in the NFL. But that is my opinion on it. Now, you might say, oh yeah, Cassidy, what about how, there was a penalty on that play, and it's like, it was a 5-yard penalty compared to making it a 26-yard catch. And when you're on the opposing side of the field, now, if you don't even have to be an expert to say that, like, the Bills would have rather had the penalty, obviously. You look at that and they get close off a sign like that, and it's demoralizing to your defense. If I was a DB in that, I would just be like, screw this. This should have been a pick. We should have had the ball. And instead, these guys get the icing on the cake through a ridiculous call of where they're first and goal afterwards. They would, I mean, and you think about it, if the Bills were actually, if it was a 5-yard penalty automatic first, they get a free set of downs, it wouldn't have been as bad. They would have still had to drive many, many, many more yards, and it wouldn't have been first and goal. And, they may have not scored 7, which in a 3-point game, it may have mattered. These what ifs are so bad for the game. They're terrible for the game. And it's like, all the people that are like, oh, this is karma. I was watching an ESPN thing where he's like, oh, this is the karma that the Bills get for passing up on Mahomes. And it's like, Mahomes wasn't even projected high when he got drafted. I still remember when, he got drafted. And it's like, you think this is some sort of twisted punishment? Sure it is. It is in the sense of like the officiating, the rules, the fiasco, whatever you want to think about it. I don't think it's rigged. I just think that the league, it just happens to go in the Chiefs' way on these important calls. Now, they don't get every call like everyone says. I agree. They get a lot of penalties and that type of thing, but it's like they get the most calls, as far as I'm concerned, in these crunch time scenarios that end up leading to the other team being compromised in some way that I wouldn't say is out of their control, but I would say it's extremely difficult, to do so, because the Chiefs, I mean, they're the biggest manipulator of the rules. We saw it with, somewhat with Brady. I don't think it was to this extent. It was not to this extent. But then we see it with the Chiefs, and it's like, it's uncanny. You look at here's the thing. You look at the Chiefs and the Vikings, and remember 2 years ago when the Vikings were a high seed, and then they were a first-round playoff exit before, and it was before they had, and it's like last year they missed the playoffs, and it was kind of like potato. They were in so many one-score games, but they went the other way. And I can tell you, I had so many people asking, as a dude from Minnesota, why aren't you cheering for the Vikings? They're a good team. And I told so many people that, they're going to be a first-round playoff exit because what they did was not sustainable. And it's like, I'm not trying to take away from the Chiefs at all. I think they are, they understand how to play in these close games, but, very, very well. But they do get calls that go their way. And it isn't realistic for a team to win this many close games, over and over and over again. But, tell me what, that's really kind of my opinion on it. I think the Chiefs, the other thing I guess I'll mention on the game that I didn't agree that the Bills did is that they kept on getting gouged by Patrick Mahomes in the run game. The run, Patrick Mahomes, was more of an X factor than any other running back on this team. Pacheco hasn't looked the same since coming back from his injury. I'm sure something will come out on how, he's still playing hurt after the season or after the Super Bowl or something like that, because he's just not the same. He's not the Energizer Bunny that's pounding it, and he's relentless. Kareem Hunt is still getting the bulk of the carries. And, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they come out Super Bowl Sunday and they were waiting for him to have a juicer of a game. Only time will tell. But looking at Mahomes, I can't tell you how many times he scrambled right, and that was the doom of the Bills defense. And it's like there was a couple times and he just scrambled right. Oh, a guy's wide open. There's a couple of times that, he bootlegs and, oh, God, there's not a guy for like 10 plus yards, and he converted so many firsts, and it was insane to me. They only ran spy really like one time with Milano where he did well. And he made sure that it wasn't a foul, and it made sure it wasn't a foul hit, and you could tell. that he was affected by that sort of thing, because people just know that the Chiefs get these types of calls that involve Mahomes, that involve, these key plays. But it was ridiculous. I did not like the Bills' game plan and the way that they did not adjust. They shot themselves in the foot. It may have not even came down to, the final end of the game where it's like, oh, they finally do a bootleg off the left side and they give it to Samari Pirine, who, is a savvy vet, nothing flashy, but understands what his job is. And they essentially win off of, these rollouts from Mahomes. And, it's like the guy is, one of the best and sneakiest players and good at making the defense flinch. He makes them flinch, giving him his opportunity to win the game. So it's like, here is my opinion. The Chiefs deserved to win this game because they played, a methodical game and they were never out of it. However, I think they did get the benefit of the doubt on some calls that should be looked at and the rules should be changed on them. But that's really it for my reflection from the weekend. And, thanks for, listening to me rant on this a little bit. It definitely didn't go the way I wanted it to. I really wanted a Super Bowl where, the Bills have a good shot. Or, the kind of the Cinderella story of Jayden Daniels and that team overcoming adversity. But obviously, they have a promising future. Jayden Daniels looks like he can. I mean, I don't know if he can get better because he was really good this year, but it's like if he plays like the way he did every single year, they're going to be in it for years to come. And it's like, I'm sorry for, I think that the Bills needed to be a little bit more gung-ho. I feel like when they beat the Chiefs, they had a bit more flair, a bit more gung-ho. I feel like they played with too much trepidation in this game, especially for the defense. And it's not like the defense got stops when they needed it, but you give up 21, in the first half, seemingly barely unable to really stop them at all. That's just a recipe for disaster. But yeah, tell me what you think in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe if you want more NFL content like this. And later this week, I will be picking my, who I think is going to win this Super Bowl and what I kind of expect to happen in this game. But thank you all for watching. This is CastCast. And as always, go Pack Go.